I found out that my husband secretly transferred our house to his mother despite the fact that I had been paying the mortgage for years. Now the house is being auctioned, and we're in the midst of a divorce. I'm a 38-year-old woman, and I have been married to my husband, Alex, who's 37, for 3 years. Everything in our married life seemed pretty normal until yesterday when I stumbled upon something very suspicious in his study. I met Alex about 6 years ago when I had just moved to the city for a new job. Alex was already established here, living in a rented condo with his two brothers. His family ran a grocery store in the suburbs. We dated for a few years, during which time Alex bought a house and paid the down payment. His desire to own a home was so strong that it delayed our wedding plans. He insisted on having a house before we got married. Shortly after we tied the knot, Alex lost his job and struggled to pay the mortgage. I stepped in to cover the payments for a few months until he found a new job. Unfortunately, his new job didn't pay enough to keep us afloat. We agreed that I would continue paying the mortgage, and in return, he would add me to the deed as a co-owner. This seemed like a fair deal to me. My new job in the city paid well, and after working here for 2 years, I had saved enough to buy property. This arrangement appeared to be the perfect solution. For the past 3 years since our marriage, I've been faithfully paying the mortgage on our house, with only 7 months left until it's paid off. Yesterday, I was home alone and, feeling bored, decided to clean. Normally, I avoid entering Alex's study because he doesn't like his things moved, but something compelled me to tidy up this time. As I was cleaning one of the bookshelves, I came across an envelope addressed to the housing society where we lived. Inside was an updated house deed. I assumed Alex had updated it to include me as a co-owner, but to my shock, it had been changed to his mother's name. Yes, the house I've been paying for all these years was now in his mother's name, and he hadn't even told me. The date on the document was months old, meaning he had deliberately kept this from me. My mind is racing with various possibilities, but I can't think of any reasonable explanation for his actions. It feels utterly deceitful, and I now feel as if I've been married to a stranger. I haven't confronted him yet. I don't want to face him without fully understanding the situation. I took photos of the documents to show to my lawyer, and until I uncover the full story, I plan to maintain the same facade he's been using for years. Update 1. Hi everyone. I've received confirmation from my lawyer about the house deed, and it turns out that the document is indeed the latest one. Alex has transferred the ownership of the house to his mother. Since there are only a few months left on the mortgage, the deed specifies the ownership transfer post-mortgage. I feel completely betrayed. I have been working tirelessly, making countless sacrifices to pay off the mortgage so he could be free from the EMI, only to find out he gave the house to his mom without telling me. I was ready to confront him immediately, but he's out of town. A few months ago, Alex was offered a new project to set up a team in a nearby city, so he's mostly away and visits home only once or twice a month. I wanted to discuss this face-to-face rather than over the phone, and in the meantime, I decided to plot my response instead of just having a heated argument. Honestly, I didn't initially plan for revenge, but things unfolded that way. A week after discovering the deed, I received a text from Alex reminding me to pay the mortgage. That message sent me over the edge, and I immediately decided to stop paying any further EMIS as a way to retaliate for the betrayal. I went to the bank and changed the contact details from Alex's number and email to mine, so he wouldn't receive payment reminders or calls. Alex had to confirm this change, and I told him it was for me to receive the payment notifications. He agreed without hesitation. Once that was set, I ignored all their payment reminders and calls. I'd already defaulted for 3 months, and the bank notified me that if I don't pay for another couple of months, the house will be auctioned. Fine by me. But there's more to unravel. I needed to understand why Alex did this. A bit of background on Alex and his family. They're originally from the South. I'd prefer not to name the place to avoid unnecessary conflicts. They never managed to own a house because his father had to start from scratch. Alex has 4 siblings, and it was tough for them to own a home while supporting a family of 7. When we were dating, Alex shared that he always wanted to own a house before starting a family. This dream was something his parents held dearly, but since they couldn't afford one, Alex was determined to ensure his children grew up in their own home, what he envisioned as their ancestral house. I never suspected anything was amiss. I understand that owning a house carries significant sentimental value and a sense of security. It's possible that Alex wanted to give his parents something they had longed for and kept his intentions hidden from me, thinking I would disapprove. Of course, anyone would likely have reservations about that. I understand the emotional drive to do something special for your parents, something they couldn't afford themselves. However, regardless of those sentiments, it should have come from his own money, not mine. He had no right to keep me in the dark about it. Needless to say, our married life has fallen apart. We were both playing mind games. We were never particularly cheesy or affectionate as a couple. I used to initiate romantic date nights occasionally, but I've stopped doing that now, and Alex never seemed to mind. Plus, with him living in a different city for the project and only coming home occasionally, things have actually been a bit easier for me. I'll keep you updated if there are any new developments. Update 2. Hello everyone. Thank you for all the suggestions. Several of you advised me to investigate the reason behind Alex's actions rather than jumping to conclusions and potentially ruining everything. My lawyer friend also recommended the same. After much contemplation, I decided to look into the matter further. Initially, I tried to uncover the truth on my own, but despite much brainstorming, I couldn't piece everything together. I even considered the possibility of an affair. I tried checking his phone when he was home, but it was clean. Rather than wasting more time and energy, I decided to hire a private investigator to follow Alex. It was costly, but it was worth it to resolve the uncertainty I was facing. It took nearly a month for the PI to gather all the details. Apart from confirming what I already knew about the house ownership and Alex's family history, the investigation revealed something new. Alex's ex, Jay, she wasn't just an ex, she was his fiancée. They had been engaged a month before our wedding. Something happened that turned their relationship hostile. This occurred about a year before I met Alex, so there was no infidelity involved. The troubling part was that Alex never mentioned this to me. This wasn't just a fleeting relationship, it was a serious commitment, and he had never told me about it. The agency provided me with details about Jay, and I looked her up on social media. She seemed quite affluent, with a father who was a real estate businessman. A few days later, I decided to visit her office. She was married, so simply showing up at her house to discuss her ex-fiancé seemed inappropriate. I introduced myself as Alex's wife and mentioned that it was something important. She agreed to talk. I asked her about the reason for their breakup. She was hesitant to discuss her personal life. She appeared genuine, so I decided to be upfront to get the information. I told her about the house situation and she smiled. She said, "Oh, so he finally managed to trap someone for the house." Then she relaxed and shared everything. She met Alex at a mutual friend's party and they hit it off. They dated for a year, during which Alex expressed his desire to own a house. It felt like a déjà vu moment for me. Her father, being in real estate, helped her secure good property deals for Alex, but he kept rejecting them, saying they were beyond his budget. Since she was already living in a house gifted by her father, Alex moved in with her instead of buying his own place. They got engaged, but soon after Alex pressured her to transfer the house to his name. She tried to convince him that ownership didn't matter since they were getting married, but Alex used his sob story to manipulate her into giving him the house. He told her about his parents' struggles to afford a home and how he always wished to own property. She was nearly convinced to give him that sentimental satisfaction, but her father intervened and disapproved of Alex's request. Alex tried to manipulate him as well, but her father agreed to let Alex co-own the house, provided he signed a prenuptial agreement stating that if they divorced, the house would go to her and that Alex could not sell it or alter its ownership. Alex refused to sign the prenuptial agreement, and they eventually broke up. When I shared my story about how I ended up paying the mortgage, Jay smiled and confirmed that it was all part of a plan to entrap me. She also mentioned that Alex's parents are very conservative and had agreed to let him marry her only because of her wealth. In Jay's case, when this issue was discussed, my mother-in-law was very aggressive in pushing her to agree to Alex's terms. During one argument, she admitted that she disliked modern girls of our ethnicity because we are too dominant. This explanation seemed plausible, especially since I never got along with Alex's family. We rarely spent time together, and Alex always kept me at a distance, claiming his family's conservatism would disturb our peace. Jay suggested this was to keep me from suspecting anything fishy. My mother-in-law was indeed cold, and Alex never left me alone with her. I thought he was protecting me, but he was actually protecting himself and his family. I asked Jay if it was possible that Alex had changed. She said she highly doubted it. She bluntly told me that once Alex got the house, he would divorce me and marry someone from his own community who was more submissive. I wondered why he didn't marry someone of his choice in the first place. Jay explained that the woman Alex preferred couldn't afford a house to give him. That sounded outrageous, but it now makes sense. I hadn't been seriously considering divorce until now, or maybe it was in the back of my mind that I wasn't acknowledging. Let's see how things unfold, but with the information from Jay, I'm convinced that Alex is not the person he has been pretending to be. P.S. For those who still think I'm wrong for letting go of the house without confronting Alex, I won't justify my actions because I know I'm doing what's right at this moment. He tricked me into this, and now he's going to face the consequences. Even if he doesn't intend to divorce me, he has concealed so much crucial information, revealing his malicious intentions. I've been betrayed deeply, and I no longer care about his feelings. Update 3. I've been eager to share this update. the house is finally up for auction. I defaulted on the loan for 6 months and ignored all the payment calls. I received an email from the bank about a formal letter being sent with the final deadline to pay the mortgage. Alex was in town at the time, but I made sure the letter didn't reach him. I was closely tracking its delivery, and as soon as it was in my mailbox, I picked it up and destroyed it. Call me evil, but it felt satisfying. Last month, bank officials visited the house to discuss the consequences of my continued default. They warned me that if I didn't pay within the next 30 days, the house would be auctioned. I pretended to consider paying, but I'm okay with the auction if I fail to make the payment. Since I've missed the deadline, the house is officially up for auction. Additionally, Alex is going to suffer severely on his credit score. The loan was in his name, so he's the official defaulter, not me. When the bank officials came by, they warned that it can take years for a loan defaulter to rebuild their credit score. Who cares? Good for him. I received a notice from the bank to be present at the auction. The owner of the house needs to sign the final papers to hand over possession, so the notice was technically for my husband. Since he transferred the ownership to his mother, I'm unsure how this will play out. My lawyer friend clarified that the house remains a bank asset until the mortgage is fully paid. Once it's cleared, the house would be handed over to Alex, and then he could transfer it to anyone he wanted. So, the document I found in his study essentially stated that the house would go to my mother-in-law after the mortgage was paid off. Regardless, he failed to keep his promise to add me as a co-owner of the house. After meeting Jay, I'm convinced of his malicious intentions. My gut feeling is that he has been betraying me. Update 4. The house has been sold, but the process was quite dramatic. I'm relieved that I didn't fall for Alex and his family's pretenses. I was clueless about how the auction procedure worked. I thought it would be a typical auction where bidders place their offers, the highest bidder wins, and then they move in while we move out. But it doesn't work like that. The bank listed the house for sale at a price that covered their mortgage amount plus a premium interest rate on the principal. Meanwhile, we received an eviction notice. When the notice arrived, I had already rented a house for myself, so I moved all my furniture and decor with me. I left only the items that specifically belonged to Alex, like his clothes and accessories, in the garage. The bank officials had informed me that they would call whenever they found a suitable buyer, and Alex would need to sign the final papers to transfer the house. I decided to wait until the house was sold before breaking the news to Alex, but he showed up unexpectedly. He was shocked to find the house locked and his belongings piled on the front porch. He called me asking where I was, and I told him I was at work. He yelled, demanding to know why his things were outside. I told him that the house was no longer his and that the bank had seized it. He lost his mind. I couldn't see his expression over the phone, but I'm sure he was furious, and I was relishing every moment of it. He bombarded me with questions. How? Why? When? I told him I was at work and needed to hang up, suggesting that if he wanted more details, he could meet me at a cafe near my office in the evening. He showed up at my office within an hour, but I didn't meet him until I finished my day. He was livid when he saw me. He realized that I had been messing with him. He demanded, "What did you do?" Before I revealed my hand, I wanted to see how far he would go. I told him I defaulted on the loan because I had other commitments. He asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said I was afraid and had no idea the house would be seized if I defaulted. If we weren't in a public place, I'm sure he would have lost control. Inside, I was cracking up at the sight of him so enraged. He kept going on about how precious the house was to him, how it was his dream, and how I had shattered it. He blurted out, "What's the point of marrying someone outside his community against his parents' wishes if he couldn't gain anything from it?" His words were shocking, but I didn't lose my resolve. When he finished venting and lashing out at me, I handed him the paper I found in his study. He fell silent. He muttered, "I can explain." He said his parents had saved their whole lives and paid the down payment on the house, so, for their happiness, he had named them as heirs to the house. He argued, "My parents are already in their 70s and will die before us, so they would never inherit the house. It would always be ours." That was such a ridiculous thing to say. I asked him why he hid this information, why he hadn't made me the co-owner as he had promised, and, most importantly, why he kept his past with Jay a secret. He was shocked to hear her name. He replied, "Oh, that manipulated you." I told him the house was still not sold to others. If he was so keen on it, he could always pay the mortgage and get it back from the bank. He said he didn't have that much money and begged me to do something about it. I refused. He threatened me with divorce and a fraud case for defaulting on the loan. I told him to go ahead, but he should be ready to pay the price. And yes, the money I had paid for the house mortgage over the past 3 years. That same day, his mother called and requested a meeting. She had never spoken to me in a complete sentence until then, and now she was being all sweet. I agreed to meet. It was about the same request to save the house. I told her it didn't matter to her because it wasn't her house. She was lost for words and couldn't hide her true self. She turned bitter and said, "That's why I don't like girls from this country. They are big-mouthed like you and use their brains way too much. My son is going to divorce you and marry a girl from our community, then you'll understand." I laughed in her face and said it wasn't the 1950s that she could threaten me with a divorce and get away with it. That evening, I called my lawyer friend and asked her to proceed with the divorce papers. I claimed the money I had paid for the house and demanded compensation. I'm not sure if he'll be able to afford it, but I don't care. People like Alex who prey on others' emotions for their own gain need to pay the price. When he received the papers, he called and begged me to reconsider the divorce terms, saying he couldn't pay such a huge amount and that his parents had to sell off their grocery store to settle it. I told him I didn't care and hung up. I'll update once the divorce is finalized. Until then, I'm living my life freely and I've already moved on in the last 7 months, so I'm pretty cool with the whole separation thing. We also don't have any kids, which makes everything better. Now let me share the latest update. I discovered that my wife has been secretly texting a guy from her grad school for months. She even baked him cookies and arranged a meetup with her parents. We've been married for about 3 years and we recently moved across the country so she could attend grad school. I secured a career job in the new location and have been mainly financially supporting us. Over the past few months, she's been on her phone a lot more. I asked her a few times who she was texting so much, and she said it was just a friend from school. When I pressed for more details, she became defensive. Unsure of what else to do, I reluctantly checked her phone. What I found was concerning. She's been texting this guy from school all day, every day, and into the night. The messages seem harmless overall, nothing sexual or explicit, but there are some red flags. I scrolled back to the beginning of their conversation thread. The first problem is that the texting started when she asked a friend for this guy's number and then began texting him out of the blue. She's always the one initiating the texts, often sending multiple messages if he doesn't respond right away. I've never met this guy, don't know his age or what he looks like. Though their conversations appear innocent, she seems to text him just to chat, often sharing her school dramas and activities. It also looks like they spend a lot of time together at school, playing some card game. She has even left dinner early to go back to school to play cards with him. She often invites him to hang out one-on-one, whether at school, at the bar, or elsewhere. When her parents visited, she even invited this guy to the bar with us. Additionally, she baked cookies for him, a rare occasion since she usually bakes for special events. I remember her baking a type of cookie she had never made before, and at first, I thought she was preparing them for a party she was attending that night. The texts revealed she baked them just for him. What's worse is that she went out of her way to do it. Since I had the car that night, she walked to the store in the rain to get the ingredients, baked the cookies, and then spent 2 hours at his apartment. She did attend the party afterward but only stayed briefly to say hi to a few people before leaving. One thing that's been bothering me is my financial insecurity. My profession doesn't pay very well, and she lived a very privileged lifestyle through her parents before meeting me. She's now in grad school for a profession that typically pays significantly more than mine, about 5 times what I make. She's set to earn more in her summer internship than I make in an entire year. The guy she's been texting is also in the same profession. Reading their messages made me feel sick to my stomach. I just wanted to reach out here to see if this sounds fishy to anyone else. I'm not sure if anything physical has happened, but she's definitely crossed some boundaries. How should I handle this? TLDR, my wife is crossing major boundaries with a guy at her school. ETA, the meetup with her parents never actually happened. She did try to get him to go to the bar, but the plan fell through. Also, the text suggests that he initially kept their conversations short and didn't engage much, but over time he became much more receptive and interested in talking. This has been going on for about 5 to 6 months. ETA, I'm not paying for her schooling, just covering our living expenses for the most part. Update, read on Jan 20, 2024. I deleted the original post, but I managed to talk with the guy my wife has been texting. I've had his number from her phone and texted him saying, "Hey, this is your name, her husband. I found out about what's been happening between you two and would appreciate your honesty about it." He responded quickly and agreed to meet me for lunch in a public place. So we met. He's 23 and pretty good looking, I'll admit. When we sat down, I started by asking him to share his perspective on his relationship with my wife. He began with a disclaimer that nothing physical had happened, and honestly, I believe him. He seemed like a decent guy. He said he respects me and never intended to get involved with a married woman. Then he told me his side of the story, and I'll relay it as he did. I approached her at the beginning of the school year because I found her attractive. I don't remember seeing a wedding ring. I don't usually check for that since most people my age aren't married. When I talked to her, she seemed very interested, with no signs that she might be in a relationship. When she found out I had a post-grad job offer, she was extremely congratulatory. After a few days of talking, I asked for her Instagram. She seemed hesitant at first, but she gave it to me. When I followed her, I realized she was married. I was surprised because of her behavior, but I decided to distance myself. After I pulled back, I heard from some mutual friends that she seemed upset. I stopped talking to her after finding out she was married. That was strange, but I let it go. Some drama happened, so I avoided her for about a month. Eventually, I thought the conflict was pointless, so I decided to compliment her to show that I didn't mind being friendly. She seemed thrilled with the compliment, and I heard from mutual friends that she was telling people we were friends again. That struck me as odd too. I just wanted to be cordial. We eventually reconciled, but shortly after, I received a random text from her saying she got my number from someone else. That was the third odd thing I noticed. Initially, her texts were infrequent, but they quickly became daily, with her often double texting me. She seemed particularly eager for me to meet her parents when they visited, but I dodged the invite, and it never happened. It felt like she was very interested in me, even though I was cautious because she was married. Over time, I started to let my guard down because I enjoyed the attention. She invited me to hang out one-on-one, played cards with me, and even offered to bake cookies. She shared that she was upset about missing a Thanksgiving trip with friends due to budget constraints and mentioned sleeping on the couch a lot. We didn't communicate much during final exams and winter break, but when the new semester began, the daily texts and double texts resumed with full force. I started to feel like she was pursuing me, and I enjoyed the attention. She baked me cookies the first week of school, brought them over, and spent 2 hours in my room, though nothing physical happened. She didn't seem interested in sex, even though I was starting to feel that way. Now her texting has become more frequent than ever. That's his account. It aligns with what I read in the messages. It seems like she might be playing a long game to get him to fall in love with her so she can leave me. I appreciate his honesty and I believe him. It feels like things have reached a point of no return. I plan to talk to her tomorrow, but I don't think there's anything she could say to change my mind now. It's over. I'll update you if I feel up to it. Update, Jan 22, 2024. I decided to delete my original post on forum, but the summary from the previous post still captures the situation well. Yesterday I had the conversation with her, and it's over. Surprisingly, the guy hadn't warned her that we had met, which I appreciated. I sat her down at the dining room table and started by telling her that I knew what was happening between her and guy's name. When she asked what I was referring to, I laid out all the key points of the emotional affair: the cookies, the attempts to meet her parents, the constant texting, and her insistence that he was just a friend. I told her that it seemed like she was obsessed with him, maybe even in love, and was planning for my replacement. She broke down in tears almost immediately. I felt a bit of sympathy, but not enough to change my mind. She confessed that she enjoyed the attention and didn't mean for it to go this far, promising to cut him off immediately. I wasn't convinced and told her that the emotional betrayal was enough for me. She suggested finding a couples therapist while still crying uncontrollably, but I felt it was too late for that. I told her I would be contacting an attorney this week and that she should do the same. Then I left. I didn't even have a place to go, but I needed to leave before she tried to persuade me to stay. I didn't want to hear any more of her excuses. I got bombarded with calls and texts while I was out, and when I returned, she was completely devastated. Her parents also called today, but I ignored them. I haven't taken any steps to kick her out of the house yet. I'm still unsure about what I want to do in that regard. I don't want her to become a burden on this guy or anyone else. Right now, I'm feeling lost. It's astonishing how abruptly everything has come to an end after all this time. I relocated to this state solely to support her, and now I find myself here alone. Most of my friends and family are back across the country. Perhaps I should have seen the signs earlier. Our relationship had its flaws. I've been consumed with work over the past year, and she seemed to seize every opportunity to attend school parties and outings without ever inviting me, claiming it was for studying. How could I argue when she was in grad school? While it's not entirely her fault, I'm relieved to be ending things now before they could deteriorate further. 3 years is an eternity, and now it's time for me to rediscover myself. This situation is painful, though. Thank you all for your support. It has truly helped me come to terms with this ending.